You know, if you just take a second to look around our planet, you're immediately confronted with this completely staggering reality. We're talking about 9,000 species of birds soaring through the skies, 350,000 kinds of beetles crawling across the Earth, 28,000 types of fish navigating the depths of our oceans. In total, we share this pale blue dot with an estimated 2 million living species, and honestly, those are just the ones we've actually formally counted. And we're merely one of them. For centuries, the origin of this breathtaking, almost incomprehensible diversity was the ultimate scientific detective story. It was the question that kept naturalists awake at night. They called it the mystery of mysteries. How in the world did all these distinct, perfectly adapted creatures come to be? Well, in this explainer, we're going to unlock that mystery. We're going all the way back to the foundational insights of one man, and we'll trace a truly dangerous idea as it evolves into a modern microscopic revolution that literally explains the very essence of life on Earth.
From so simple a beginning, endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful have been and are being evolved. Now, when most of us picture Charles Darwin, the author of that quote, we usually imagine this unmoving marble statue, right? Or some stern old man with a long white beard staring out from a dusty textbook. But that is absolutely not the man who solved the mystery of mysteries. The real Charles Darwin was an anxious, fiercely curious 22-year-old. Back in 1831, he boarded a ship called the HMS Beagle as a gentleman naturalist, setting sail on a 5-year voyage that would completely, permanently shatter the Western world's understanding of biology. At the time, the prevailing scientific belief was that all creatures had been conceived by a divine force, placed on Earth perfectly formed and utterly unchangeable. But Darwin's journey would slowly, painfully strip away that assumption, leading him to an intense inner conflict that would define his entire life and eventually culminate in that poetic realization that, from a simple beginning, endless, beautiful forms evolved.
Section 1. The Mystery of Life. Clues from the Edge of the World.
Darwin's transformation didn't just happen overnight in some comfortable, pristine laboratory. It happened out on the wild, unforgiving edges of the world. While the Galapagos Islands are super famous in the Darwinian mythos, some of his most profound insights actually kicked off deep in the interiors of Argentina and way high up in the Andes Mountains, where he uncovered towering fossils and uplifted seashells. But when Darwin finally did reach the Galapagos Islands, he noticed something incredibly peculiar about the giant tortoises. They weren't just one uniform group. Their physical traits were perfectly, almost suspiciously, matched to their specific local environments. On the humid islands, where lush grass grew right on the ground, the tortoises had these dome-shaped shells and short necks. But over on the dry islands, where the only available food was higher up on bushes, the tortoises possessed saddle-shaped shells and dramatically longer necks, allowing them to actually reach their meals. He began to suspect that these similarities and differences were not just some divine coincidence. These physical traits literally dictated survival. If a creature was mismatched to its harsh environment, it died.
It's wild to think about, but we are looking directly into the mind of a genius struggling with a paradigm-shifting idea. This right here is a page from Darwin's secret transmutation notebooks, which he kept between 1836 and 1844. Because he didn't just observe, the guy obsessed. In Notebook D, he's actively wrestling with the laws of reproduction and hybrids. He realized that sexual reproduction produces new individuals that vary, meaning no two offspring are exactly identical. He began to see that this variation was the fundamental raw material of adaptation. But a massive piece of the puzzle was still missing. He knew variation happened, but what was the invisible hand forcing these variations to become distinct, brand new species over deep time?
Section 2. The Engine of Change. The War of Nature.
To find the mechanical engine of evolution, Darwin actually turned away from biology texts and picked up an essay on demography by Thomas Malthus. Malthus pointed out that human populations grow faster than the food supply, which inevitably leads to a fight for survival. And it clicked for Darwin. He realized this applied to the entire natural world, but on an exponentially more brutal scale. Nature wasn't some peaceful, harmonious garden. It was an absolute battlefield. Let's walk through the cascading logical sequence he laid out. Step 1. Variation exists in every single population. Step 2, environmental pressure. So a lack of food, a sudden drop in temperature, maybe a new predator. This creates a life or death crisis. Darwin described this pressure with this sense of cinematic awe, calling it 100,000 wedges pounding into the face of nature, violently pushing stronger traits in and crushing the weaker ones right out. Step 3, survival of the fittest. The individuals with the tiny random variations that just so happen to fit the new environment, they survive. Step 4, they reproduce, passing that winning adaptation onto their offspring. Those who don't adapt, they die without descendants.
Out of this brutal chaos, out of this terrifying war of nature, comes the profoundly creative process of adaptation.
But wait, how does one species actually multiply into many? The answer lies in something called allopatric speciation. As the evolutionary biologist Ernst Mayr later championed, geographic isolation is the key here. Imagine a population of those tortoises get separated by, say, a rising ocean or a violently shifted mountain range. Now they're isolated in two totally different environments, and those variations we talked about, they start accumulating in entirely different directions. Given enough deep time, they diverge so far from one another that they can no longer interbreed. And boom, one branch on the tree of life has officially split into two.
So in 1859, Darwin published On the Origin of Species, completely changing the world forever. Yet for decades, Darwin had this massive, glaring blind spot. He had absolutely no idea what was actually happening inside a creature's body to cause these variations. He didn't know about DNA. Nobody did. It wasn't until the 1940s that scientists combined Darwin's theory with Gregor Mendel's genetics to create what's known as the modern synthesis. And then leaping forward into the 2000s, a brand new science called evolutionary developmental biology, or EvoDevo, opened the ultimate black box. We are talking about looking right under the hood of evolution at the molecular level.
Section 3. The Genetic Toolkit, What Darwin Never Knew.
Plunging into this microscopic world reveals that the answers Darwin so desperately sought were actually hidden in the invisible architecture of our own cells. In the 20th century, absolute titans of biology like Dobzhansky, Stebbins, and Meyer aligned on a singular, incredibly elegant mechanism. They all agreed that genetic mutation, which are basically just random, accidental glitches in the copying of our DNA, is what provides the raw material of evolution. Mutation is the source of all new traits. But here's the catch. Mutation alone is just random noise. It is natural selection that acts as the master builder. Selection is the direction-giving factor that takes those random genetic raw materials and constructs breathtaking, life-saving survival strategies.
And the crazy thing is, we can see these genetic glitches saving lives in real time today. Take the American desert, for instance. A simple mutation allowed a few rock pocket mice to grow dark fur, perfectly camouflaging them against dark volcanic rocks, while their light-furred cousins were ruthlessly picked off by predators. Or up in the dense canopy, where colobus monkeys gained a specific genetic mutation that shifted their vision to color. Suddenly, they could spot highly nutritious red leaves against a sea of tough, inedible green ones. And down in the freezing, lethal waters of the Antarctic, a bizarre genetic glitch gave a specific fish a potent antifreeze in its blood. It allows it to thrive where literally any other fish would turn to solid ice. These aren't just neat animal facts for a trivia night. This is the raw, unfiltered power of evolution happening in action.
But that brings up a really big question. If mutations create small changes, how on earth do we get entirely different body plans? Like, how do you get a bird from a dinosaur? That brings us right to EvoDevo. Scientists discovered that it's not just about what genes you have, it's about how you use them. There are these regulatory switch genes that turn other genes on and off during the development of an embryo. And what absolutely shocked scientists was the profound realization that wildly different animals, from a tiny fruit fly all the way to a human being, use the exact same grand genetic toolkit. The diversity of life isn't about having millions of completely different genes, it's about taking the same ancient genetic Lego blocks and switching them on in different patterns. We are all, at our very core, just variations on one grand genetic theme.
And honestly, Darwin was staggeringly ahead of his time on this. Look at this, in Notebook M from 1838. While modern science wouldn't definitively prove our shared genetic toolkit for over a century, Darwin was already probing the shared behavioral and emotional toolkits of humans and animals. He was asking questions like, do monkeys pout, or cry, or feel shame? He realized that if we evolved from common ancestors, our physical bodies wouldn't be the only legacy of that deep past. Our minds, our behaviors, and our very emotions would be deeply inextricably connected to the animal kingdom.
Section 4. Humanity's Deep Legacy. The Fossils Within Us. Because ultimately, the story of evolution isn't just about finches or tortoises on some remote island. It is the story of your own body. As paleobiologist Neil Shubin famously revealed, the best roadmaps to human anatomy actually lie in the bodies of other animals. Deep in the freezing rock of the Arctic Circle lies a 375-million-year-old ghost, Tiktaalik rosea. This fossil literally bridges the gap between water and land. It is a fishapod. It has the scales and fins of a fish, but astonishingly, it possesses a neck, shoulders, and the beginnings of wrists that allowed it to push its heavy body out of the water. Tiktaalik is the ultimate transitional fossil. It's breathtaking proof that the standard four-limbed body plan you and I use to walk around every single day was forged in the ancient seas.
Seriously, the next time you look in the mirror, realize that you are looking at a living, breathing museum of evolutionary history. You have an inner fish, the structural layout of our bodies, our wrists, our lungs, and even our annoying susceptibility to hernias are legacies of our ancient fish ancestors' body plans being forcefully re-engineered for walking upright. You have an inner reptile, our skin, our hair, our teeth, and the intricate, delicate bones in our middle ear evolved directly from ferocious reptilian beasts. And of course, your inner monkey, our color vision, our grasping hands, and our bipedalism are direct gifts from ancient primates. Every single breath you take, every movement you make, is powered by an anatomical legacy billions of years in the making.
Section 5. The Anthropocene. Evolution at super speed.
We are currently living in a brand new geological epoch called the Anthropocene. It's an era defined entirely by the massive, heavy footprint of humanity. Because we are altering the planet's climate and landscape so drastically, we are forcing the natural world to adapt faster than ever before. Evolution is no longer just some slow, gradual process buried in deep time. It is happening at absolute superspeed right now. And what's truly astonishing is watching this unprecedented, brutal, and creative war of nature play out right before our eyes. In Senegal, chimpanzees have been observed doing something entirely unheard of, seeking shade deep inside caves to survive rising, blistering temperatures. Down in Australia, zebra finches have actually started singing specific songs to their unhatched eggs when it gets dangerously hot out. The embryos hear this and alter their own development to hatch smaller, allowing them to cool off faster and survive the heat. And back where our story started, in the Galapagos, marine iguanas are literally shrinking their own skeletons in response to climate shifts that deplete their food sources. They're becoming smaller just to require fewer calories. It's mind-blowing.
Which brings us to our final, profound reflection. Interactions among species are the most powerful evolutionary forces on Earth. Today, we are in a spiraling evolutionary arms race, not just with a rapidly changing climate, but with microscopic pathogens constantly mutating to slip past our defenses. From Darwin's hesitant, anxious musings on a ship to the brilliant unveiling of the universal genetic toolkit, we now understand the rules of the game. The question is, as our human footprint forces the rest of the planet's evolution into superspeed, will our own ingenuity, our own science, and our own adaptations be enough to survive the very arms race we have accelerated? It is a mystery of survival that we are writing the ending to right now.